Boker Tov. Today's daf is daf Kuf Yud Aleph in Bab Mציעא. As we learn prachenical basis on some Basar V'Shivya. Yesterday we got to the last two lines on Kuf Yud Amud Beis. Tana Rabbanan, second line from the bottom of Kuf Yud Amud Beis. We learned yesterday, and we're going to talk about that at length today about the various psukim. There's a pasuk in Vayikra and Achrei Mos which says, "Lo sashek es re'acha," don't oppress your fellow, don't steal. Do not hold back the wages until the morning. We explained yesterday that's speaking, and we're going to talk about it more today. That's speaking about a person who worked for the day, who was hired for the day. He's at quitting time at Shkia, he goes home, and you have to pay him by the next morning. The pasuk in Devarim, where it says, "Lo sashek sacher avim me'achecho megercha shebarascha b'yomo titein scharo," that's speaking about a person who works at night. He gets off in the morning. When is he dismissed? At sunrise. So you have to pay him by the end of the day. In other words, if you're dismissed at night, you have to pay him. You have to be paid until by daybreak. If you're dismissed at daybreak, you have till the evening to be paid. That's what the pasuk is. But the pasuk is more details that we'll see about later on today. So let's say. This is a way to get out of the fee of paying wages. Now, today, just quickly, we'll see it soon in the Gemara. Today, when people are paid by the week or by the month, whatever the custom is, then it's understood. Then you're not being over on an Aveira for not paying him that day, because he's not really a day worker. He's not paid. He's not like these. Remember, you used to pick up those Arabs at near the old city and to work for the day. They all stand there with their stuff. Those are day workers. Those are supposed to be paid by the end of the day. Of course, they're not Jews, so the different rules apply. But if they were Jewish, you have to pay them. You only have, let's say, 12 hours in which to pay. If they're dismissed at sundown, you have till sunrise, and vice versa. So, one way to get around it is not to hire them directly. Let's say Reuben tells Shimon, "Go hire workers for me." They're not over for holding back the wages if they didn't pay them on time. Meaning, if they work, the pasuk of Al and the pasuk in Vayikra. Meaning, if you work for the day and you're dismissed at sundown, you have till the next morning to pay him. You're not over. You know why? Because you didn't hire him. This one, because he didn't hire him. I didn't hire him. I'm Reuben. I asked Shimon to do. I didn't hire him. And Shimon is not responsible because Shimon hired him for me. So Shimon said, "Listen, would you like some work? I have work for you. I know Reuben's got some work, so go work there." Now, obviously, Reuben will have to pay them eventually, right? Because they did do work for him, but he's not over because he didn't really hire him. So what are the circumstances? What were the deal? If Shimon said, "I'll pay you, please come and work for Reuben. Reuben, you got a field here. You want some work? I'll get you work. Like I'm a middleman, If he says, "I'll guarantee your payment," so Charlotte's got to pay him. Let's say Shimon hired a worker to work in Shimon's field. By mistake, he showed him Reuben's field, right? So what does he have to do? He said, "Listen, you didn't work for me. You work for Reuben." No, he's got to pay his entire wages because I said, "I hired you to work in my field, and I showed you somebody else's field. So you didn't really work for me." Yes, but since I guaranteed your payment, and I said you're working for me, I have to pay you. So then afterwards, if by mistake I showed him Reuben's field, then I could go after and say, "Listen, Reuben, your field was harvested or picked or planted, whatever he did. Pay me for that." He's entitled to that because they did work from it. Reuben's field did need the work done. Okay, so if Shimon said, "Hire me, please come and work for us, and I'll pay you," then he's responsible for paying. Shimon said, "Listen, you want some work? I have some work for you. Reuben's field, he'll pay you." So in that case, Reuben didn't hire him. Shimon didn't guarantee the payment. Right, so it's bias, and therefore he's not really your worker. He did work for you. You told somebody. Shimon said, "Listen, here's some. Would you like some work? Here, go work in this field. I'm not going to pay you. Work for him. He'll pay you." Reuben didn't hire him, so again, he does owe him the money, but he's not He's not over on that. The pasuk says, right? Huh? Reuben eventually will owe him the money because he worked for Reuben's field. The fact is, he did Reuben's field, but he's not over on the Aveira of Loson of you didn't pay him by the morning. Here's an example. Yehuda bar Merimar, You remember he said, he told his servant, go hire workers for me, and tell them, you go hire workers and tell them that I'll have to pay. Meaning, I didn't really hire them. It was like a shtick to get around it, and it's legitimate. That doesn't mean that he doesn't want to pay them. He will pay them, but he doesn't want to. If he doesn't pay them on time by the next sundown or sunrise, he doesn't want to be over Nevera. In fact, two rabbis, Merema and Marsut, these two Chasheva people, argued that they each hire workers for the other guy to get around the problem. They were going to pay what was due, but they didn't want to be over Nevera. Amar Rav Barafuna, Hani Shukoi Desur. Now, this is something that helps us today when people are not paid at the end of the day or by sunrise or sundown. So he says, Hani Shukoi, these marketers in Surah, why? Maybe everybody knows everybody knows that they rely on the market day. Let's say there was a market day once a week or once a month, and that's when they sold their wares, they sold their produce, and they were able to get money and pay the wages. Everybody knows that if you work for them, you're not going to get paid the next day or the next, by the next morning. You have to wait for the market day, and so therefore, even if they have money, they're not over. We said yesterday, right before the end of the page, that there's an Isser about the show, which is an Isser Rabbanah based on Ksubim, B'divrei Sofrim. It says there, Pasuk says in Mishlei, so for holding it back. In other words, Rashi explains, once the market day has happened, they're not over on Baal Tolen, because Baal Tolen is only, don't leave it over till the morning. If you have to pay him, if you have the guy work for you for the day and he quits you dismiss him at Shkia, you got to pay him by the next morning. Okay, that's only in a regular circumstance. Only if you hired him and you guaranteed his wages. And also, if it's not a case where, like in Surah, where it's known that you only get paid, let's say, once a month, like the minute here in Israel. In America, I don't know, it depends on the minute. Some places have a weekly payroll, some every 2 weeks of payroll, whatever the rules. Here in Israel, it's once a month. I think that's the European custom. So when you're going to get paid once a month, you're going to pay, so you're not over on Baal Tolen. Even if the month comes by and you didn't pay him at the end of the month, whatever the rules are, I think you have 7 days in Israeli law to pay him until you're in arrears. But if you don't pay him by the end of the month, you're not over on Baal Tolen. Baal Tolen is only that day. If you're over, by sunrise or sundown, otherwise you're not over. Over. But if once the market day has come and passed and you haven't paid, then you're over on Baal Tisha. You're at least over on the Divrei Sof. Yeah.
The good question is why Merema and Marzutra wouldn't even do that.
Very simple. They were afraid that they wouldn't be. Maybe he was afraid of he was asleep. At the end of the day, they go to sleep early. They get up for the daf, and he's not going to remember to pay him on time. He doesn't want to be over in Baal Tolen. He would do it just to be safe. Not that they didn't want to pay them, right? He was afraid of that.
They should be setting the example.
No, okay.
They shouldn't try to get
okay, well, the answer is the Torah is very makbid, and there's a simple way to get around it. You didn't want to be over, so they said, we'll do it this way. We'll do it this way. They don't want to take a chance of being over. We're going to see this. You're over 5, 6 Averis, depending if it was night or day, certain Averis. So you don't want to be over on that. They were going to pay them for sure, but they just don't want to take a chance. If I don't pay you exactly by sunrise, I don't want to have a lob on my ledger. So that's right. But that's what they did. Okay. Now the Mishnah said, let's say he's paid by just for a few hours. He's not paid for the whole day. He's not working the whole day. He just worked for a few hours. He can get paid the whole night and the day. That's what it sounds like, but it's not so clear what this Mishnah means. Amarab, let's say he works in the morning. He's hired in the morning till midday, right? Gova kolayom. He has to, in other words, when you're dismissed, you have until the next sunrise or sundown to get paid. That's the idea. When you're dismissed. So if you're dismissed at 12 noon, you have till sundown. You kolayom, that's it. Shishos. The shifts, let's say you're working at night. You have the midnight shift until 3 a.m. Let's say you're working from midnight till 3 a.m. So when you get off at 3 a.m., you got to be paid by only that night. That's it. It just doesn't give you a lot of time. In other words, you get the owner has the Baal Bais has to have cash ready to pay these people. That's what's so difficult. Shmuel, that's Rav's opinion. Shmuel says no. I agree with you. The guy who worked during the day. If he's off at noon, you got to pay him by sundown. The schir shows the live, but if he's working at night and he gets off, let's say at 2, 3 a.m., he's got night and the day. because the day, so to speak, follows the night. I agree in the case of the day, he works for the middle of the day and he gets off at noon. So that's it, you only have till the end of the day. But if you work at night, so when you get off at night, really, as we know, the day follows the night in halacha, so you have that next day. That's Shmuel's opinion. It's not. What about our Mishnah? Our Mishnah just says it plain. It says, here shows, if you're paid by the hour, go b'kol yom. Isn't it mashma we're speaking about if you worked at night? Tifta the Rav, it's a kasha Rav, the son's exactly like Shmuel. Rav will say, no, it's doesn't come in two different cases over here. The Mishnah is not clear. They're talking about two different cases. Here shows the yom, go b'kol yom. Here shows the laila, go b'kol laila. That's how Rav will learn. But Shmuel will say, no, the Mishnah is exactly saying what I say. We're speaking about if you get off at 2 a.m., you have that night and the next day. Tanan. What about the rest of the Mishnah? Let's say you work by the week, per month. That's what you would call today, the workers who are paid. Paid by the year. You're paid by the 7-year cycle. Depends on when you're dismissed. If you're dismissed, when you're dismissed after all this time, whatever it is, a week, a month, a year, 7 years, whatever it is, if you're dismissed during the day, go b'kol and get the whole day. Right. So if you get up at night, go b'kol laila b'chol hayom. So here you see, like Shmuel, that if you're dismissed in the middle of the night, even if you worked a month or a year, if you're dismissed in the middle of the night, you have the night and the next day. So this is clearly mashma like Shmuel. Rav will say you're right, but the Mishnah doesn't go like me. But it's a machlokas tanoi. The Tanya schir shows the yom go b'kol yom. Schir shows laila go b'kol laila. The Rav Yehuda. That's Rav Yehuda's opinion. That's what I go like. Rav is saying I go like Rav Yehuda. Gemara could say there's a machlokas Rav and Shmuel. It's really machlokas Rav Yehuda and Rav Shimon. But okay. But Rav is a Tanakh, so he could also agree with Rav Yehuda. Right? He agrees with Yehuda, and Shmuel will go like Rav Shimon. Rav Shimon shows the yom go b'kol yom. Right? If you're dismissed at noon, you have only that day to pay him. Shows the laila go b'kol laila b'kol yom. Mikan omer, from here you see that whoever holds back, whoever refrains from paying his worker over the shemos the essay halal, he's chayv on 5 los assays and 1 assay. Now, what are they over? Mishum bal toshok esreyacha. The pasuk says in Vayikra, lo sashik esreyacha v'lo sigso, lo so. The pasuk ends up lo so to lo sacher echad boker. We're speaking about a day worker who's dismissed at sundown, right? You have only till the next day to pay, only till sunrise to pay him, right? You have the whole night to pay him. But it says also shas lo sashik esreyacha and lo sigso. So in the beginning of that pasuk, so what are you over? Bal tashok esreyacha mishum lo sigso, right after this. Umishum bal tashok sachir ani ve'evyon. That's the pasuk in Dvarim that we said that in Kiseitzu, where it says sashik sachir ani ve'evyon yachecha migercha me'ashever atzusharecha biyomotin. So you got to pay him that day. That's speaking. We explained about a night worker who gets off at sunrise. So you got to pay him that day. Even though you got to pay him by sundown. But it says lo sashok sachir ani ve'evyon. It says lo sashok in Vayikra, lo sashik esreyacha v'lo sigso. And it says in Dvarim, lo sashak sachir ani ve'evyon. So that's the third lo saseh, right? Lo sashak esreyacha lo sigso, lo sashak sachir umishum bal tolen, right? Back in Vayikra, lo solon tu lo sachir chad boku umishim yotin schor. That's pasuk in Dvarim. So that's an assay. Biyomatin schor is an assay. Umishum lo savo lo vashemesh. Okay, that's what the pasuk says. Right? That's what the pasuk says in Dvarim. Biyomatin schor lo savo vashemesh. So we have here 5 lo sasays and 1 assay. But that's not really over on 6 things. Hani dik biyoma like a balayla, with dik balayla like biyoma must be said. The ones that you're chayiv at night, you're not chayiv in the morning. You're not chayiv. Certain ones that you're chayiv at night. Yes, lo sigso and lo sashik esreyacha could apply both day and night. But baltolim, he said, is only on a day worker, and Biyomatik Sfaro is going on a night worker. So some that are during the day are not at night, and vice versa. So how can you say you're over on all 6? So Haniki could be Omer like a Balaladika. The ones that only apply during the day don't apply at night. The ones that don't apply at night don't apply at day. We're just talking about generally that workers, and we said schirus means whether you're renting a house or renting a worker, whatever it is. We're talking about there are 6 averis involved over here. So Mar says, well, what is Oshay? Says Lo Shasik, don't oppress him. What is oppression? The Azel guess what's stealing. It says Lo Sasho Esreyacha. Below 6 don't steal. What's the difference between Sasho and stealing? I'm Rav Chisda, he tells us, listen, go, come back tomorrow, I'll pay tomorrow. Delay, right? Zeroshik, that's oppressing him, making him feel bad, like you gotta keep coming back. Yes, but let's say he says, I have the money. I'm not gonna pay you. Zero Gesel, that's stealing. I'm not going to pay you. That's stealing. Stealing is, like I took it right out of your hand. Yeah, I know I owe you money. I'm not going to pay you. Maskul of Sheshis, what it meant. What do you mean? In Vayikra Hey, it says over there when you have to, it says Oshek Esamiso, right? It says if a person commits Ma'al, criminal Ma'al, and Miso, and it says Begezel of Tzumasiat or Oshek Esamiso, they were talking about oppressing him, and there you chayav a shvua. You're only chayav a shvua. Why? Because you denied it. It says he denies it. So it's mashma. Gemara says that Maskul Abaye, Ezui Gezel Shechayv. I'm sorry, I skipped a few lines. Maskul Sheshes, but Sheshes first asked his question. He says, Ezu Oshik Shechayv Torah carbon. What's the Oshik in Kichesh Esamisa and Vayikra Hey, where it talks about the carbon of the Oreid when you swore falsely? Shechayv Torah carbon dumi to bekod. It's like bekod. It says bekod o besumasiad o oshek asamiso. Just the kakafalei ramona. What do you mean when you deny a pikadon? What does that mean? That you're saying it's like a pikadon. You gave me something to hold. You gave me a deposit, and I'm denying that you gave it to me, and I swore falsely about it. So oshek has to be what's the oshek the of Torah carbon? The Torah says you have a carbon there for denying it. It's like because the kaframona over here. When you say come back tomorrow, that's the oshik. There you haven't denied anything. It's mashmid. You have to deny money. Elam Rav Sheshes. I could ask the same question about Gezel, but we'll come to that. Elam Rav Sheshes. The sat of oshik. When he says I paid you already, that's denying money. Right? You're coming to me. Not saying that I come back tomorrow. I said I gave you already. That's oshik. The yesh he says I have it, but I'm not going to pay you. Sehu Gezel. Okay, so oshek, we defined oshek as being a person saying I paid you already, so I'm denying that I owe you the money, and if I swear falsely in Bezdin, then I have to bring a carbon. Maskul Babai says, what if we could ask the question about Gezel too? Ezo Gezel Shechayv Torah. What's the Gezel? Again, that pasuk talks about Kichesh Bamiso, the Sumasiyot of a Gezel Oshek Asamiso. Ezo Gezel Shechayv Torah carbon. Where you deny? Doing the bekod being the kakafal lemona. When do you chayav a carbon for stealing? Not if you just stole something from a guy and they catch you red-handed, you got to repay him. But where you chayav a carbon, when the pasuk talks about kichesh miso begezel when you deny something that you deny you owe him the money, kafal lemona. So it can't be where he says, I know I owe you the money, but I'm not going to pay you. That's not for the money. There, you're just saying you're lying. You're saying I'm not going to pay you. I never hired you. That's denying I owe you the money. I never hired you. That's oppression. I paid you already. That's gezel. So in both those cases, right, you're denying that you owe the money. That's the kichesh. That's you deny you owe the money, and if you denied it and then you swore falsely in Bezdin about that, then you're chayav a carbon. So originally he could have said, I'm not going to pay you. I'm not going to pay you. Why? Because I never hired you, or I paid you already. So Rav Sheshes ma'ishna oshik the kashla ma'ishna gazel lo kashle. When Rav Sheshes first asked the kasha about oshik, that oshik requires denying something rather than saying come back tomorrow. Why didn't he ask the kasha about gezel also? Gezel also requires denying something. Right? So why didn't he ask the kasha about Gezel? Rav Sheshes only asked the kasha about Oshek. Then Abai asked the kasha about Gezel. Why didn't Rav Sheshes ask the kasha about Gezel also? Ma'aseh Gezel lo kashlei. Amlocha Gezel the Gazlei b'hara kafrei. The second was Gezel. Yeah, Gezel. He understood Gezel as being what? I'm not gonna. I have the money and I'm not gonna pay you because I stole from you. I'm not gonna pay you. Then when he came to court, then he denied it. So you can understand that Gezel is the way we originally defined it, as I have the money, but I'm not going to pay you. Then when he took him to court, then he denied the whole thing. I feel Oshek now. So why don't you say something by Oshek? Why don't you say Oshek? First I said, come back tomorrow. Then I said, I paid you already. So a Gezel that he already stole, that he already said, I'm not going to pay you despite the fact that I have the money. Does it say with an oppression, which means like something that you're oppressing now? Oh, Oshaksiv. It says the Kichesh Ba Miso, the Gezel, O B'Tzumasiad, O Oshakasamiso. I pressed him already. Oshaksiv, Shashkokfar, that he already oppressed him. So if he already oppressed him by saying that I didn't come back tomorrow, where's the denial? The answer is he has to explain that no, Oshik does not mean come back tomorrow, come back tomorrow. It means I paid you already, or I never hired you, right? I don't owe you the money. I don't even much. That's what he says is Oshik. And Gezel, he said, can remain the way it is. Abaya said, no, Oshik means I never hired you. Either way, you're denying the money. Either I paid you already, or I've never hired you. So there you're denying it. Rava Amar Zehu Oshik Zehu Gezel. You don't have to explain the difference between Oshik and Gezel. That Oshik is you're denying it, and Gezel saying, no, I do owe you the money, but I'm not going to pay you. And you come to all these various differences in how to explain it. Oshik and Gezel is the same thing. You oppress somebody by not paying him, or you stole his money, same thing. Why did the pasuk say two things? You're over on two lav. That's why he says b'kichish b'miso b'gezel b'sumasyad o ashakasa miso. Or pikadon, pasuk to the pikadon. Pardon? No. That's return the money. Correct. There's no jail in Torah. There's no jail. Jail is only drop on it. There's no fine. No, there's a fine if you thieved it. If you burgled it, then you have to pay double. If you burgle it in the middle of the night, that's kefil. Gzela means give me your money or I'll punch you in the face, right? Or I just steal it from you. I grab your wallet, pickpocket. You don't pay a fine for that, Torah. The rabbis, put you in jail and all kinds of stuff like we have today. You don't pay a fine. You have to return the gzela. So that's it. If you burgle it in the middle of the night and show that you have more fear of man than God, so the Torah punished you with kefil. That's if you didn't admit it on your own. Admit it on your own, not of Knesset's part. Says the Mishnah, the schar that we're talking about that you have to pay on time. Let's do the general rule is pay him on time, right? Pay him by the morning, pay him by the evening. You got to pay him on time. That refers not just for payment for workers who are humans, for your animals also. By borrow your utensils, rent a car, whatever it was, you have to pay on time. Yesh b'mishum, it involves the mitzvah in form of a yom so you got to pay him on time. Yesh b'mishum l'som p'lasachar, the mitzvah in the Vayikra talks about, they were talking about a day worker who's dismissed at night, and the yom is talking about a night worker who is dismissed in the morning. Listen to ad boker. Don't hold it up until the morning, meaning that you got to pay him. If you dismiss them at sundown, you got to pay him by sunrise. This only applies, you're only over if he asked for the money. He demanded his money, right? He made claims, says, pay me. Low tafel. If you didn't ask for the money, ain't over low. It's only if he demanded the money. You want to explain what let's say, how do you say in Hebrew a check? Can he check? Can he hamcha'a? Right? It's an order to pay. Right? You give me the bank in order to pay this guy. Let's say the owner said, I don't have cash, but go to the store, the makolet, I'll cover the bill, right? I tell the makolet, I give him $100 worth of credit. That's okay. It's a shechana who tells me to go to the money changer. Ain't over, love, you're not over, because that's a legitimate way to pay him. Sachar b'zman nishma b'noto. Now, when he said a sachir, normally you only swear Torah on when you deny money, but a sachir, if he's paid on time, but as he just finished work, and the owner says, I don't owe you the money, and the sachir says, you do owe me the money, I'm going to swear to and take, even though normally you only swear to pater. The Gemara explained we've had it many places that since the owner, the Baal Bais, has to pay many people, he's not sure who he paid, whereas the worker knows he didn't get paid, so he swears and gets paid. In other words, I'm talking about where he denied that he never worked here, or where the owner says he never worked here, but he says, I think I paid you already, then the worker can swear and get paid. Mano, once time has passed, it's a few weeks later or a few months later, and then he's not entitled to it. It's only entitled at that day because we said that day, presumably the worker knows he hasn't been paid, whereas the Baal Bayit can be confused with all his workers. Im yesh edim shetafu bizman. If there's edim that he demanded the money in time and he wasn't paid, and there is a yishma b'notel, even if it's much later. Ger tosha, this is the part that Gemara is going to discuss. What about a person who's not Jewish? A ger tosha, that means a non-Jew who lives in Eretz Yisrael, and he's abides by the Noachide mitzvahs, and he doesn't do avodah zarah, but he can eat treif. What about him? Yesh mishum biyomatit mischaro. So the Mishnah says, this is going to be our Gemara is going to deal with. It says you're chayiv on the pasuk in Dvarim that if he worked at night, you have to pay him by the day. You have to pay him by sundown. He's not chayiv on the pasuk in Vayikra of if he's a day worker and he was dismissed at night, that you got to pay him by the morning. You don't have to, because that he's not Obviously, you have to pay him. You have to pay him. He worked for you. You can't cheat him. But you're not over on that mitzvah of losal. Why is that? We'll see in the Gemara. So the Gemara says right away, who does our Mishnah go like this? This is about ger toshav. It's not like a goy. I mean, he is a goy. I mean, it's not like a goy. You say we don't have to pay him at all, or you're not over anything on him. He says you are chayiv on the mitzvah in Dvarim, but not one in Vayikra. Why is that? Money Mishnah go like lo Tanakama b'chech, not the Tanakama of this brisa that discusses the pasuk of me'achicha that we're going to say in a minute. Rabbi Yasir, not Rabbi Yasir, who argues with him. What's that? The Tanya we learned on the base now. Pasuk is me'achicha. Where does it say me'achicha? Oh, me'achecha, really. I should say achicha. It's achecha. Pasuk in Dvarim says, "Lo sashak sachir ani be'yad." Don't oppress the payment, the worker. Don't oppress the worker who is poor and destitute. Me'achecha, from your brothers. Omikercha, or among the gerim. Asher ba'artzecha b'sharecha. So we're going to darshan now those words. Me'achecha, of your brothers. Pratnachem excludes Oved Avodah Zarah. Your Oved Avodah Zarah is not your brother. Gercha zergat tzedek. Okay, so it says don't oppress a worker who is poor and destitute, whether he's of your brothers, not a goy, not an Oved Avodah Zarah. But if he is a Ger Tzedek, you are included. He's got to be among your brothers, not an Avodah Zarah. But even if he's a Ger Tzedek, Asher ba'artzecha b'sharecha. What does b'sharecha, the last word in the pasuk, say? Zeh ochel nevelos. That's a ger toshav who eats treif, right? But he's entitled to, because how do it's referring to that? Because it says if you have an nevela treifa, it says like ger sheb'sharecha titnena ba'achala, right? The ger sheb'sharecha who's in your sharim, you give it to him, he can eat it. So you see, b'sharecha refers to a ger toshav. That's a goy who keeps a zayin mitzvahs b'nei Noach. So here it says again, you cannot withhold the wages of somebody who's a Jew, not of Avodah Zarah, but if he's a Ger Tzedek, that applies. If he's a Ger Toshav, that applies, right? Eliela Schar Adam. That's only a human work. How do I have to include your assets too? If your assets work for somebody, whatever is in your land. Okay, so here we see all this. And all these, whether it's you, your animals, your kalim, you're over on all these averos, meaning the ones in Dvarim and the ones in Vayikra. We'll see there's a shava between the two. Mikan amru, echad charam, echad char behema, echad char kalim, yesh ba mishum biyomatit nischaro. The pasuk over here ben schar in Dvarim applies to them. Yesh ba mishum bal ton tosaf. So the Tanakama here in this price says it's not obviously our mission is not going like him, because it here says that you're chayiv on, you have to pay the workers on time. All these rules apply to any worker except for an Oved Avodah Zarah. But anybody else, like a Ger Toshav or a Ger Tzedek for sure, you have to pay. So obviously our Mishnah is not going like this Tanakama, right? Because the Mishnah says that a Ger Toshav, you're only chayiv on the pasuk in Dvarim, not the one in Vayikra. So our Mishnah doesn't go like him. What about Rabbi Yosef Rav Yehuda? Rabbi Yosef Rav Yehuda disagrees with the Tanakama. He says, Ger Toshav yesh ba mishum yav scharo. That does apply. The Ein Bo Mishum B'Al doesn't have Talmud. So that sounds like our Mishnah, right? That the Ger Toshav applies the pasuk in Dvarim, but not the one in Vayikra. But the Behema Kalim Ein Bo Mishum B'Al Tashik. Oh, he says Behema and Kalim. That only applies the pasuk of Lo Toshav Sachir Ani Behevyon, not the other ones, right? Rabbi Yosef Yehuda Ein Bo Mishum Sachir Behevyon. Only that pasuk applies, but what does it mean? Behema and Kalim, only the pasuk in Dvarim, not the pasuk in Vayikra. So the Mishnah doesn't go like him either, because the Mishnah said everything applies, right? Our Mishnah said that everything applies. Did our Mishnah talk about Behema and Kalim? It said Echad Schar Echad Schar Behema, Echad Schar Kalim, Yesh Bo Mishum Scharo, Yesh Bo Mishum Lasam Boker. So our Mishnah won't go like Rabbi Yosef Yehuda. Rabbi Yosef Yehuda, Ger Toshav part of Rabbi Yosef Yehuda works in our Mishnah, but not the part about Behema Kalim. He says Behema Kalim money. Who does our Mishnah go like? Tanakama Be'achecha Kasha Ger Toshav, because the Tanakama, this price says that even the Ger Toshav, all the psukim apply to him, right? And that's what the Tanakama says. But our Mishnah says that Ger Toshav only the mitzvah and Dvarim applies, not the one in Vayikra. Rabbi Yossi, if you want to go to Rabbi Yossi, Kasha Behema Kalim. Our Mishnah says that Behema Kalim, all the rules apply, and Rabbi Yossi says that Behema Kalim, only the pasuk in Dvarim applies. Amarava, High Tanah Rabbi Shmuel. You know what? The Tanah of our Mishnah is not like either one of them. Not like the Tanakh, not like Rabbi Yossi, but it's Tanah Rabbi Shmuel. Tanah Rabbi Shmuel. Echad Schar, Echad Schar, Behema, Echad Schar, Kalim, Yesh Bo Mishum B'Yavnit Scharo. That applies. Umishim lo solin. Ger toshav yesh ba mishim yad nescharo ein ba mishim bal talin. Now, so that's our mission is basically is like the Tana Torah Shmuel. That works out. That all the Behim and Kalim, etc. applies everything if they're Jewish. But Ger Toshav, only the pasuk in Dvarim applies, not the one of Vayikra. My Tana Kam, what's the Tana Kam's reasoning? The Me'achecha, what's the reason? Gomer Sacher Sacher. It says Lo Som Pula Sacher in Vayikra, and it says B'Yom Titin Scharo. It says Lo Sashik Sacher. In Dvarim it says Lo Sashik Sacher Ani Ve'Evya Me'achecha Me'Gercha Shevet Sacher B'Yom Titin Scharo. So there it says Sacher there too. So what applies to one applies to the other. Rabbi Yosef Yehuda, therefore everything applies according to the Tanakh. Rabbi Yosef Yehuda says, "Lo gomer sacher sacher." He doesn't hold the Gzeir Shav at all. It's like more than he lo gomer sacher sacher. Okay, he doesn't hold the Gzeir Shav. Behema v'keila mishum yotin tzcharo nam yachayev. Why does he say that Rabbi Yosef Yehuda, not our Tanakh of our mission? Rabbi Yosef Yehuda says that behema kelim that behema kelim it doesn't apply. Rabbi Yosef Yehuda says that what behema kelim only chayev of lo sashik sacher lo sashik sacher. Why doesn't he say the other ones apply to him too? He doesn't like sacher. By kelim mishum yotin tzcharo nam yachayev. You should be chayev for b'yom titin tzcharo. Why do you say you're only over lo sashok? Okay, lo sashik sacher is the pasuk in Dvarim, but it also says b'yom titin tzcharo in Dvarim. Then very next pasuk Yidal, pasuk Tisvav in Perikov Daled. So why aren't you chayev at least for b'yom titin tzcharo for the animals too? Tani Rav Chananya. Pasuk says it says in that pasuk, well, Nahim and Caleb are not poor, right? Whoever can be poor or rich, that the pasuk applies to them. Again, the pasuk only if a person can be rich or poor, that pasuk applies to. Behim and Caleb, obviously Caleb are inanimate, and Behima, no such thing as poor or rich when it comes to animals. Pardon? They belong to someone, yeah, but the animals themselves, yeah, the animals cannot be. His schar, who? Somebody who could be poor or rich. And if the owner is, yeah, but the owner you pay for his work, but not for the Behim and Caleb. The Tanakama Haiki Ani Umayavale. So what does the Tanakama do with that? Tanakama says you pay everything, all the psukim apply to all workers except for Ovdei Avodah and to Behim and Caleb. What is it, Kianu? And we boil a lock money lash. That's to tell you that if you have two workers who work for you, one is poor, one is rich, you should pay the poor person first. Now you say it's not logical. Okay. You have two, you should pay the poor person first. You only have enough money to pay one person right now. You have to get money later on, so you should pay the poor person first. Rabbi Yosef Yehuda, how's Rabbi Yosef Yehuda, who says that Ani teaches me what? That we're excluding Behim and Caleb. How does he know that? Oh, that's the pasuk of Losashok Sacher Evan, the pasuk before that, right? It says the pasuk says Losashok Sacher Ani Ve'evyom, right? Ani Ve'evyom. So I learn from that pasuk that an Ani comes first now. So the Tanakama says you need both psukim. One, an Ani is a poor person, and Evyom is destitute so much so that he's not embarrassed to beg for the money, as we'll see now. The Tanakama says you need both psukim. Chad like money la'asher. Want to tell me that an ani you should pay before an asher, but chad like money la'evyon. An ani should be paid before an evyon, even a person who's more destitute than an ani. Why is that? It's richa. If you tell me evyon, he comes with mission below cost of it. An evyon is not embarrassed to ask for the money, so destitute he goes around begging. That's an evyon. So you might say he's not going to be embarrassed to ask, but the ani who's embarrassed to ask, he's poor but he's embarrassed to ask. You might say. You might not pay him. So the pasuk is telling you might not pay him first. The pasuk is telling you, if you have an ani and an evyon, they're both poor, but you should pay the ani first because he's embarrassed to ask for the money. The cost of him but a rich person who's embarrassed to ask, maybe over there, maybe you should pay the rich person first. He's too embarrassed to ask for the money. So if you tell me an ani comes before an evyon, fine, right? The cost of it, maybe an ani shouldn't come first. Whether he's rich or poor, pay him the same way. He doesn't need the money. Therefore, you should pay the ani first. The evyon needs the money. Maybe he shouldn't come last, but you should pay the evyon just like you pay the ani. It's really you need a pasuk for both. The Tana done, our Tana, which is like Tana Debay Rabbi Shmuel, who says what? That you you pay everything to everybody except for the ger toshav, who only has the second pasuk in Bar, not the first one in Vayikra. If he holds the Gzeira Shava, I feel the ger toshav nami. All the rules in Vayikra should apply to the ger toshav as well. If he doesn't learn the Gzeira Shava, how does he know you pay Behim Kalim? Behim Kalim, right, is learned out from what? From Ba'artzacha. That's what we said. And the pasuk in Bar says Ba'artzacha, right? So our Tana, who says that everything applies, even the pasuk in Vayikra applies to everything, even Behim Kalim. How does he know that? If there's no Gzeira Shava, he says right. Our Tana of our Mishnah also does not learn the Gzeira Shava, just like Rabbi Shapiro doesn't learn it. The Shiny Hassam, how does he know that the rules of Behim Kalim apply even in Vayikra? With you. This fits in with your interpretation, Michael. You understand? It says anything you work with your animals, shouldn't hold that back either. Whereas the other Tana said no, that that animals are excluded, right? Why did he exclude them? Because animals don't fit into the Kiyani. But he says no, that animals and your possessions fit into Itcha ad Boker. So Ger Toshav also works with you, Itcha, who's working with you without Gzeira Shava. Just say it applies because he's working with you. Amakoreacha. Pasuk there says Lo Sasha in Vayikra. Lo Sashik es Reacha below 6 so lo so only Reacha below Ger Toshav. Yachi afilu Behim Kalim. Became also should not be included. Why? Because Behim Kalim is not Reacha. It says Itcha. So we have Itcha including Behim Kalim. We have Reacha excluding Ger Toshav. How do you say that Itcha includes your animals and your utensils, your inanimate objects, that you have to pay those on time? And we're saying Reacha exclude that Toshav. Maybe it's the other way around. Maybe Reacha should include everything, and Itcha, all right, and Itcha should include Reacha should exclude Behim Kalim, and Itcha should include Ger Toshav. Start Behim Kalim. It's better probably that we would include Behim Kalim. Why? Because they're included. They belong to your Reacha. So when you say Lo Sashik Reacha, like that's your svara, Michael. That his items are included with him. But Ger Toshav ain't B'chal Mam Reacha. That's not Reacha. Ger Toshav is a person. He's a god.
What does it say about Ger Toshav? Bisharecha. So it's Itcha.
That's but the pasuk.
They don't read it that way.
No. That's not right. It says Bisharecha in the pasuk in Dvarim, and he says that does apply to Ger Toshav. The pasuk by Yipra doesn't apply then because he doesn't learn the Gzeira Shava, right? In other words, you're saying what the Tanakhama says. There's Gzeira Shava, so it applies. Everything applies to both. But if Yosef, Yehuda, and Tana Bishmael don't hold the Gzeira Shava, so Yosef Yehuda says that's not the Gzeira Shava. So how does he know whatever he therefore he says Ger Toshav doesn't apply Lo Son. There's no Bisharecha there. And but he does say that animals are excluded. Why are they excluded? Because they don't fit into Ani. But our Tan of our Mishnah says that animals are included. Why? It says Itcha includes your animals. But Reacha excludes the Ger Toshav. That's why Tan of our Mishnah, like Rabbi Yosef Yehuda, excludes Ger Toshav, but for different reasons. Okay. It's including Mom and Reacha. Okay, now we're going back to Tanakama de Meachecha, who says everything is included, all psukim included everywhere, and he holds the Gzeira Shava. What does he use Reacha? Reacha doesn't exclude our Ger Toshav because he holds Ger Toshav is all the rules do apply to Ger Toshav. What does he do Reacha? It doesn't apply to an Amaleki, that's like an Avodah Zarah. So he said, that's from Achecha. We already included Achecha, Lo Sashik Zachar, excluding Avodah. This excludes an Amaleki. Amaleki me'achecha nafka. We already learned from Achecha that an Amaleki and Avodah Zarah is excluded. Chalamesha Oshka, but Chalamesha goes. One is to allow, if you oppress them, the way we learned before, that Oshek is one thing, saying I paid you already, and Gozlo meaning I'm not going to pay you, I'm stealing from you, I'm not going to pay you. So in both cases, by an Amalek, even though technically you're not allowed to steal from a goy, but by an Amalek, even you're supposed to kill them all, you're allowed to. One is to allowed to oppress him, and one to allow him to steal from him. If you say you can steal from him, you know why I can steal from him? Because he didn't work for it. You're just stealing from him. But he worked for you. Oshik means that he worked for you, and you're oppressing him by withholding his wages. And below, maybe you can't withhold his wages. You can. And if you tell me you're allowed to oppress him by withholding his wages because he never really got the money. You're just withholding what is due him. But if you steal from him where it was in his hands already, you're literally stealing from him. Maybe there you're not allowed to. So therefore, we have two psukim. One is achecha and one is re'echa, telling you that you're not chai whether you steal from an amaleki or whether you withhold his wages. What does Rabbi Yosef Yehuda with lo sol? And he doesn't hold of the Gzeira Shava of Sachar. And what does he do with Itcha? We said here that according to the Tana of our Mishnah, Itcha means what? Your animals and your kalim. But Yosef Yehuda doesn't hold of your animals and your kalim. So what does he do with Itcha? Well, like Ravasi uses it for Ravasi's brush. Ravasi, over Mishum Baltalin. Even if you only hired him to pick one cluster of grapes, if you don't pay him, you're over even on a small amount. Why? Because it's itcha. He's working with you. Itcha. He's working with you, even if it's a small amount. The idach. What does the Tanakama hold? The Elav who knows say it's nafsho nafka learns that out from Elav who knows it's nafsho. He's Elav with him with Elav from his work and from you Elav from his work. He's giving his soul nafka. In other words, whatever he's working for. Whatever he agreed to do, he's working for that, and that's how you know that you're chayav on lo solon, even if you only hired him for that. Davar amos nafshel, anything that he's given himself for. What does Rabbi Yosef do? How does he know that? What does he do with that Russian? What does he do with elav nasas nafsho? If he learns out from what? From itcha, that even if he's working for anything for you, even one cluster you're chayav on. So what does he do with elav nasas nafsho? Look at the time of elav nasas nafsho. Because this guy went up on a ramp or on a ladder, and he's hanging from a tree. These workers who are taking the risk, he's risking death to work for you. Lo al scharo, not for his work. In other words, that's why it's so improper to withhold his wages even till sunrise or sundown, because he's risking his life for you. All right, we'll pick it up here from Davar Achar tomorrow. But it's another drasha there, but gets married to tomorrow. We'll pick it up from Davar Achar tomorrow. Wednesday is a long day. Have a good day, Cole.